It's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of becoming Israel again. Parshat Chukat. If we look in Parshat Chukat, we have here a transition. Many different transitions. Transition from the second year with the spies, the Meraglim, and Korach that we had last week, to the 40th year where Moshe hits the rock, Aaron and Miriam die, Moshe is pronounced that he has to die as well, and the Jews begin to conquer the land of Israel in that final year. So that's one transition. There's a transition from Elazar from Aaron to Elazar, to his son, to be the high priest. And you find that already in the story of the laws of the red heifer, that the laws of red heifer must be done by the Sagan, by Elazar, not by Aaron, because the transition has begun. And then we find the transition of Yisrael, becoming Israel. The Jews who used to be Beit Israel or Bnei Israel, all of a sudden they become what? Israel. And not only are they referred to differently, 10 times here they're referred to as Yisrael, very unusual, but also they're active. They hear that the enemy's coming, the enemy's fighting Yisrael. Yisrael, the nation of Israel, as one corporate entity, as one power, makes a vow to God, and they say, look, if you give this people to me, I will destroy their cities, and I will offer the spoils to God. And God hears the voice of Israel, Kol Yisrael, reminiscent of the radio station today, and so on and so on. Also later on, the Jews do tshuva for the first time. The Jews do tshuva. They have the snakes come, and the scorpions, and they come and attack them, and the Jews say, "Oh, chayim chatanu, we spoke against you, against God. What can we do?" So they have the copper snake, and they're healed. But the sign of the apothecary. But it's the first time that the Jews just repent. They don't just complain. They complain and then they repent. Beautiful. This is a great parsha where there's a transformation of the Jews. They really become Yisrael. We've talked about some of that before in the past. You can see some of our past videos. The question is, what was the impetus? What changed them from Bnei Israel, a bunch of tribes and cousins, to Yisrael, to a one unified nation? Similar to what we find at Mount Sinai, Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Har. They were Israel at Mount Sinai, but then they lost that unity. Well, the greatest moment of Yisrael where the Jews begin to be active is this war against Canaanites. It's very complicated. How can they be in Canaan? They're not in Canaan. The Canaanites maybe came to the Transjordan. Anyway, look at the Ramban there, Ibn Ezra, what exactly is going on. But whatever it was, Israel plays the role. Israel is the one who makes the vow, not Moshe. Moshe plays no role, just Israel. The Jews emerge as an entity even without Moshe, just Israel. And when does that take place? That takes place after the death of Aaron. After that transition, that beautiful moment where Aaron's clothes are put on Elazar and Elazar becomes the new high priest and Aaron dies at that moment, that's when the Jews rose to power. So you say, why? What was it? So I'd like to offer 4 theories as to why it was that after the death of Aaron, that's when the Jews became Israel. Theory number 1. We know from the previous juxtaposition of the death of Miriam to the red heifer ashes, which atone for sin, it's called the chatat, it's called the sin offering. We know that the rabbis say that, and the Rashi quotes it, that mitat tzadikim mechaperet. Just like the red heifer atones, so to the death of Miriam atoned. So they were atoned for by the death of Miriam. Now the death of Aaron specifically. Aaron was, after all, a priest, a high priest, a Kohen, Gadol. So with his death, the Jews are atoned, and as a righteous person, his death atones. It's a little bit of a vicarious atonement, which is not our central belief in Judaism, but there is such a thing. And so that's why they've been atoned for, so they can rise to these great spiritual and national heights, because they've been atoned for by the death of Aaron. This idea relates to a second idea, which just because Vayivku Oto et Aaron Shloshim Yom Kol Beit Yisrael, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron for 30 days, something we don't even find with Moshe. This reminds us of point number 2, which is Tov L'Lechet Beit Evel. It says in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, that it's better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a feast. Why? It's the end of a human being, and the person takes it to heart. When the Jews mourn for 30 days, better than even going to a shiva for 5 minutes, when you mourn for 30 days, you begin to take life more seriously. They had transformation. See, the question is a question of character development. Last week they were the raiding Jews, the complaining Jews, and all of a sudden this year, 38 years later, all of a sudden they're making vows and they're repenting. What happened? Where's the transition? So maybe the character development takes place with the death of Aaron. Sometimes a grandparent dies, God forbid a parent dies, and you sort of take it to heart. You start coming to shul, you start thinking more about life, you start thinking your own mortality. That shaking up, maybe that's what led to the Jewish people becoming Israel. There's a third theory, which is a little bit radical, and I suggested very tentatively, but it's interesting to ponder, and that is that we know that Aaron was Ohev Shalom and Rodev Shalom. Aaron was a man of peace. Moshe was some fire and brimstone sometimes, but Aaron said, "Oh, come on, you're my good friend. How could you not do that?" People would say to themselves, "I'm such a good friend of Aaron. How could I sin like that? After all, he considers me a good friend." And Aaron brought peace between husbands and wives. And Aaron was so amenable to people that when they wanted to bring the golden calf, he said, "Well, you can bring golden calf, but we'll do it tomorrow. And you don't really want to bring me your earrings, do you?" Aaron somehow was acquiescent to the golden calf because he was so forgiving of everybody. And then he atoned for them. They started sinning with Korach and complaining like crazy. So he takes the fire pan around and he atones for their sins. So everybody loves Aaron. So they cried a lot after when he died. But then they realized, mommy's not here anymore. If Moshe was like daddy, Aaron is like mommy. And mom, in the classical tone, I don't mean to say that every mom and dad is exactly like that, but in this model of sort of the forgiving mom, that was Aaron. Aaron was always so forgiving. Sometimes when a child has a very forgiving mom or dad, you misbehave. You figure you can get away with anything. You can always repent later. You'll be forgiven later. You'll be atoned for. He'll take care of it. He'll clean up the mess. When Aaron dies, they realize, oh my goodness, we are the adults in the room now. Now we have to do something. We have to be Israel. We have to rise and become something different. So, radical suggestion number 3. Suggestion number 4 is alluded to by the Ramban. Why did they become Israel? Because they heard the Canaanites was coming, the king of Arad was coming. And maybe he came to greet them there, or maybe the Jews were in the Negev. Maybe this is later. But whatever it was, they had this battle, and Vayishmenu Shevi. The enemy took a captive from among the Jews. They take just one little girl, one maidservant, or did they take, maybe Ramban says, well, not a few more people than that, but not a big group, but they took some people. When the Jews saw that was done, they said, this is hard. We've got to do something about this. We've got to make a vow to God. We've got to promise God that if we take the spoils, we'll give everything to God. As the Ramban says, that the rabbis said, this is very strange. I mean, how could the Jews in the desert have any casualties or any people taken captive from the enemy unless they had sinned? At the time when they asked whether God is among them or not, Amalek come to attack. Okay, fine. But during a war, during the days of Moshe, no one was ever lost. The battles of Moshe, when he took Sichon and Og, the Transjordan, no one was lost. Nobody died. You ever hear of casualties during those wars? It was a war with no casualties. That's the way Moshe operated. That's the way the Jews operated. It was a miraculous sort of a thing. When they saw that someone was taken captive, this is weird. Even Orach Chaim says, how did the Jews not go crazy when they saw that someone was taken captive? This is terrible. How could this possibly happen? Taking of captives, when you think that you have divine protection and all of a sudden someone takes a captive, as if they can just walk in to your tents and grab one of your kids, grab one of your people and take them away. This is something shocking. And this, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're experiencing now in 2024. When Jews sitting in their homes, sitting in the kibbutzim, dancing around in the desert somewhere, and suddenly realize that the enemy could just waltz in, take the people, kill them, rape them, burn them, chop their heads off, touch their body parts off, and take some of them, a whole bunch of them, and bring them into Gaza with impunity. No army, no protection. This is a shock. It should shake everyone up. As the Jews became Israel, when one, maybe according to Rashi, according to the Midrash, just one child was taken, we, how much more so in 2024, should be shaken that in 2023, that in Tafshin Pei Dalet, this very Hebrew year, a whole bunch of 250 people were taken captive. How much more so should we be shaken? And indeed, we've become Israel. The Jews of Israel became Israel. They came, 350,000 people came out to go into the reserves. People stood up. They volunteered. They took action. People were beginning to put on talis and tefillin and tzitzis, and American Jews gave hundreds of millions of dollars to the effort. People were waking up. People were seeing that some people who are supposed to be friends and neighbors of ours are protesting, not having no sympathy for the loss of life in Israel, and for the notion of the self-defense of the state of Israel. We're sickened by it. We're waking up. We're saying, wait, am I different? Do I see things differently than people around me? Does anybody understand me? Does anybody get me? Anybody get what Israel is all about, and what it means to be attacked, and what it means to have a country, and someone wanting to your absolute demise, as the charter of Hamas spells out? Does anyone understand that? And Jews are waking up and becoming Israel. And this gives us hope at a time that's a very dismal time, a very difficult time. We have hope from the notion that maybe, once again, Jews have become Israel. In the days of Moshe, Aaron died, one child was taken captive, and the Jews woke up and said, we have to become Israel. Today, how much more so in our time? Over 1,000 people were killed, 250 people taken captive. Today, still many captives still lost in Israel. After over 290 days, surely we have to wake up. We too have to become Israel again. Thank you for joining us here at the Baron Hirsch Congregation. Join us each week for a discussion of the Parsha and the holidays. And thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.